Video games based on movies are sort of a dying art. All the way from the 1980s to the mid-2010s, these games flooded the market, and they were usually in two camps, either completely terrible or just okay. Eventually, they would completely die out. But in 2015, Avalanche Studios, the makers behind the Just Cause series, would try their crack at it with the video game Mad Max. It's a video game based on the movies, and while it uses the name of the movie, it tells a completely original tale. Many didn't know what to think when the game was announced, as, again, while Avalanche Studios make the Just Cause series, Mad Max game didn't seem high on anyone's list, and when it came out, many put it at the back of their mind. But over the years, this game has gained a reputation for being a sleeper hit, underrated, a hidden gem that you should at least check out. So that's what I'm doing here today in this video. But before we go any further, please give the video a like, comment down below, and give a subscribe to the channel. It's time to find out, is Mad Max worth your time? The story of Mad Max has Max searching for what he calls the Plains of Silence. But as he crosses the wasteland, he runs into Lord Scabrous Scrotus and his war boys. After an intense fight, Max's car is stolen and he's left for dead in the wasteland. Max manages to survive, and he vows to get his car back. But that's easier said than done. He manages to befriend a mechanic named Chumbucket, who says he's working on a secret project called the Magnum Opus. Max quickly finds out that the Magnum Opus is a car, and he now knows one thing: to build the Magnum Opus up big enough so that he can take down Lord Scabrous' gang and get his car back. To do that, Max has to liberate the wasteland, which will take him across far and wide in this crazy wasteland, meeting a whole bunch of interesting people, and has Max confronting his own past. Overall, the story is pretty middling. There's really not much to write home about when it comes to the story. You go from one region to another, you help out a bunch of people, and then you find out that the war boys are actually still hunting you down, and the threat now becomes pretty serious. Max as a character is pretty stoic. He's like one note. He has his goal to get his car back, and he'll do anything, even sacrifice people to get his car back. So he can kind of seem very mean as the game goes on. I just feel like there are certain points in the game where I thought they did something really cool. Max starts to open up a lot more when he meets this mother and daughter named Hope and Gloria, and then he starts to open up a lot more. At certain points, Max confronts his past and the people that he's lost, and he's still dealing with those very serious losses that he had. And I think that's really cool, but it doesn't really go a lot further than that. There's a smaller twist in the middle of the game where the story goes from Max just trying to fix his car, trying to find a car that can pull him up and get his car back, to now he actively needs to kill somebody because they are going to ruin his plans. That's kind of how it is. So the story really nothing to write home about. It's okay. It gets you from point A to point B, but it's not going to be like, oh, remember that Mad Max story? No, nothing like that. Where I do think the story does shine is its world building. Every character, enemy, vehicle, weapon, landscape has a bio thrown into it, kind of like Batman Arkham style, and you get to give a lot of backstory on that. I love this type of stuff, and it just helps with keeping you engaged in the world of the story. Overall, it's a fine story, nothing bad, nothing terrible, probably fine. You'll probably forget it after you finish Mad Max, but you'll probably have way more interesting stories to tell with you exploring the wasteland. For a game that was released in 2015, the graphics actually look pretty good. It still holds up today, and I have to say that's a testament to how strong this game is. Now, if you were expecting the much colorful or the big colors that the movie has, then it's not really much here. The game is very muted on color and graphics. Like, it's not like a big explosion of color, but it still does give it the look of the films while still keeping itself unique. And I think that's the one thing I really like about the game. I love the designs of the vehicles, the enemies look really good, the wasteland also looks good, and even Max himself holds up. The game runs completely smooth as well. I didn't have any hiccups. There was not really, okay, I would say there was like one bug, but that was just a small bug and it got fixed the moment I literally walked into a camp and it fixed itself, and that was really it. For music, there's not much to write home about. I don't remember any track. Nothing of the gameplay soundtrack is memorable. If you put the soundtrack on, I could not tell you what this is. The game focuses more on ambient sound, especially when you're driving. And again, you're driving a lot, and even when you're in fighting, there's not a lot of like tracks that pop up here. So I can't really talk much about the music. Voice, I think everyone does a fine job. No one really stands out, but I think everyone is pretty good in what they do. Max doesn't talk a lot if you're expecting him to do. He doesn't. Everyone else really speaks more than Max, but I think everyone does a fine job. Overall, this is a good, fine package when it comes to graphics, voice, and audio. When it comes to gameplay, Mad Max is a game of many surprises. First of all, the game is open world, which I didn't expect whatsoever, thinking it was going to be like a mission-based structure game. Along with it, it has survival elements, vehicle combat, and surprisingly good melee combat, which I didn't expect whatsoever. So let's first talk about the vehicle combat, which takes about 60% of the game is going to be driving. So if you're not a fan of driving games, then you might not be a fan of this. But the driving is simple, smooth, very arcadey, and well done. So you might actually be turned around and actually start liking driving games if you play this. The Magnum Opus is your main vehicle, and it's probably the most powerful vehicle in the game. You can upgrade it, add armor, weapons, and even customize it. This is very important for dealing with the many enemies of the game. To help you, the Magnum Opus has a couple of additions. A harpoon, which is useful for ripping apart car parts, using a shotgun to blow up gas tanks, a sniper rifle, flamethrowers, and turbo boost. Jump bucket will also help in repairing the vehicle whenever it's damaged, but you can only repair your vehicle when it comes to a complete stop. And if you do get your vehicle damaged, you'll have to jump out, let Jump bucket repair it, while you try to fight other two cars that are coming to drive right at you. You would think that shooting and driving would be super difficult, but the game slows down whenever you aim, giving you a good enough opportunity to pinpoint your target, which I think is super helpful. It just makes something that can be very annoying sometimes when you have to shoot out of a car or shoot with a car very, very easy. Vehicle combat is filled with the craziness you would expect, and these guys will come at you. Enemies are relentless. They will continue attacking you, continue following you. Like, they hardly ever stop. But the wide variety of enemy vehicles are fun too. They have small, quick vehicles that try to get in front of you, ones that will drop mines, others have high ramming power, some will grind your vehicle on the side, while others will carry war boys that will try to jump into your vehicle and try to pull you out of your vehicle. They even become armored much later in the game, which makes them even harder to take down. To keep up and not die, Max can access the garage at any time to customize and upgrade the car by changing out the engine, chassis, wheels, body, and even paint job. Upgrading the weapons and the car itself all has to do with scrap, which you can scavenge from camps or deserts. Scrap is kind of like the main currency of the game. While you can't really buy anything in the game, you use it to level up, and leveling up is going to be very important. It's tied to a couple of things I'll talk to a little bit later down the line. But the Magnum Opus is not your only vehicle. You can actually steal and hijack enemy vehicles, take them back to your stronghold, and then add into your collection. You can also steal the same Legion's car and then drive into camp with it, thinking that there you are a friend. I actually really like that little thing. You can't drive forever though, as vehicles all have a fuel gauge, and fuel is a scarce resource in the game. So you have to be looking around for fuel canisters and keep your eye that you always have enough fuel to get you from point A to point B. While I do like this little survival element, I will say that the fuel thing kind of becomes a little bit irrelevant as you go later into the game, especially with some upgrades. For a game that's very much focused on driving a lot, it also has a really good emphasis on melee combat. While Max carries his signature shotgun, ammo is very scarce, so you rely a lot on your fist here and use your shotgun for much more really bad threats. The melee combat is a free-flowing combat system, and if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. It's a copy of the Batman Arkham games. Literally, almost one for one. The only difference here is Max doesn't fly around like Batman, and he has a combination of wrestling and boxing styles. You attack with square, you can hold down square to do a much stronger but slower attack, and then you counter with triangle. So it's pretty simple stuff. The goal is to build your combo until you enter a frenzied state where your attacks are more powerful and you can do a lot more finishes. You also carry around shivs, which you can use to finish enemies much quicker. You can pick up melee weapons, but they break after a good number of uses, but they're very good to use because they can hit multiple enemies, and again, they do way more damage. There's a lot of variety again when it comes to enemies. Ones that carry melee weapons, some have shields, others can grab you, some are faster than others, so combat can get a little bit hectic, especially since the camera can really screw you over a lot of times. But it's really fun, especially if you start unlocking Max having increased strength. You unlock more moves at the end, more finishers, more combat stuff. I really like a lot of the combat in this game, and you actually do combat a lot more than you do some of the driving. While you do a lot of vehicle combat, I also think you equally do just as much melee combat as well. Some of the survival elements are also thrown in here when you're on foot. The only way you can heal yourself is with your trusty canteen, which you always carry around you, or you can find food such as dog food or maggots to restore your health. The canteen thing is again another cool little survival element thrown in there, but again, it's not so restrictive as every single camp has like a water source to refill your canteen, which again, it's not that hectic, which I kind of like as well. Now, on the other end, just like your car, you can also upgrade Max. You can give him more power for his fists, more armor, he can take less damage, he can start doing different moves and different counter stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do, and again, you can just access this upgrade menu whenever you want, which again, really awesome stuff. Grifter is a wanderer. He offers Max tokens where you can upgrade his skills further and has some of the best upgrades in the game. So this is like increasing your health, you take less, getting more health from your canteen, and probably my most favorite one, using less fuel and driving. This really cut away the whole fuel survival element of the game, because when you use the Magnum Opus, which you'll use like 90% of the time, you will hardly ever look for fuel after you get this thing upgraded to full, which I recommend you doing because it just cuts that survival element completely out, which again is good or bad depending on how you play. The only way you can get these tokens, though, are by completing various in-game challenges. And while it does sound like a chore, it's pretty easy to achieve, as you can just get most of them by playing the game. And there's a lot of challenges, like so many challenges, that you'll probably level up everything before even completing any of the challenges. But what does the wasteland entail? I thought the wasteland was going to be a pretty boring open world, but it's actually pretty nice to look at. The landscape consists of canyons, caves, deserts, seabeds, wastelands, and as you go closer to Gas Town, heaps of trash and oil as you go closer. The wasteland is a hive of activity filled with things for you to do. The world is divided into several different regions, with each major region headed up by a stronghold, which will kind of become your base of operations. Each region has a threat level, and you have to reduce this threat level by doing various activities in the world. This is where the game can be a hit or miss with some, as it's filled with the usual open world fluff that if you played any Ubisoft title like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed will have. But they're not that bad. Actually, I like a lot of the activities you do in this game. The variety of tasks to lower the threat level will be taking down convoys, clearing minefields, tearing down scarecrows, shooting people with your sniper, and of course clearing camps. You'll be doing these most of the time, as they will help you unlock higher levels to upgrade, and of course unlock more stuff as you lower the threat level. I had fun doing all of these activities, with the best activities being the camps, as camps is really fun to take down. There's a lot going on when you're trying to take down a camp. There are perimeter defenses that stop you from coming in, and then there are war criers that will, if not dealt with quick enough, can actually strengthen enemies while you're fighting them once you actually get into the things. You can scout out camps before you ever enter them to maybe find a sneaky way to get in, and of course to see all the defenses. Take them all down, enter the camp, and then you start fighting everybody in the camp. Again, it's really fun to do these type of stuff. I really like a lot of the camp stuff in it. There's a lot on the map, a lot of activities, but I wouldn't say all of them are overwhelming. Seriously, the only main stuff you have to focus on are those activities that I told you about, but there will be many scrap locations that are just on the map. And to complete an area, you need to collect everything on the list, which will mostly be scrap, maybe a historic relic, and then sometimes there'll be stronghold parts. These stronghold parts are actually pretty important to use them to upgrade the stronghold. Collecting various parts will allow you to get benefits whenever you enter a stronghold, like restoring health, restoring your water canteen, and even giving you fuel. So trying to lower the threat level is important, as it will unlock powerful upgrades for your car much later down the line. I really like this sort of thing, and I can also see people not liking it. Again, you're not required to do really any of these stuff. Yes, it's the same open world fluff you have in many games, and you really only get stopped maybe once or twice by the game telling you, hey, you need to lower the threat level, and then you can actually do the mission. That only happens a handful of times, so you're not really recommended to do all of that stuff. And even though I wasn't recommended, I still had fun doing a lot of these stuff. I did wish that there was a big reward once you actually completely cleared a region to 0%, but you don't really get a reward for that. I thought there would be something nice. And again, I like the upgrade stuff that you get when you get these stronghold parts and all those things. I thought that was really good because it makes you want to go out and search these areas. But what I mostly like, especially if you're a completionist, is that everything has a list. It makes it easy for completion. You can find mostly everything on this map. Nothing is really hidden from the player. There may be the only thing that's really hidden are the small scrap locations on your map and some of the minefields. But everything else is on the map, easy for you to find. That's what I super love. And as you continue, you'll even find that some camps have bosses that you have to take down, which are even harder to do. So it becomes like a giant fight between everything else. But probably the most surprising thing are some of the elements I never thought. It has a dynamic day and night cycle, which I never thought about. And it has environmental hazards such as sandstorms. I have to say, the sandstorms are probably the coolest thing in the game. While they are rare, when it happens, it transforms the whole map into the sand hell. There's wind and lightning. You're in danger everywhere, but if you manage to survive the storm, you can get a lot of scrap. I have to say, the first time I ever encountered a sandstorm in this game, it literally blew me away. I couldn't believe that this existed in the game. I never heard anybody really talk about the sandstorms in the game. The sandstorms are the coolest part about this game. I just wish there may have been more of it, but there isn't. I just wish there was some of it. Now again, there are issues with this game. The game isn't perfect. Both on foot and in the vehicle, cameras can be a big issue. For some reason, when you're in the car, the camera loves to lock on and give you a cinematic view of stuff happening. So sometimes you just can't really get the car to unlock. On foot, it can be particularly bad in combat, and you'll get hit a lot because you can't see what's behind you. And sometimes Max's reaction is very, very slow. I don't know why. And while you can choose other vehicles in the game, you're mostly gonna stick to the Magnum Opus. It's the most powerful game. It's got all the different stuff. There's no use to even change out. The only time you'll ever change the car is if you have to use Dinky D, the dog, to clear the minefields. And even then, it's I don't really need to use any other car at all. So when I do use another car, it's kind of annoying to really use the car. And while I did like a lot of the activities, I believe for me, only 2 activities were really, really filler. The one being the minefields, as you have to take another car, like I said, to clear it out. I felt that was completely filler. I don't need that in the game. And convoys, while they are fun to take out and tough and cool, you only get a hood ornament out of it. And the hood ornaments don't do anything. They're just meant to look cool. And I'm like, really? Just doing that to get an ornament piece? Yeah, I'm not really a fan of that. Overall, I loved a lot about this game's gameplay. I loved the vehicle combat, the melee combat. There was so much stuff I really enjoyed about Mad Max. It just felt like a game that had a lot of care thrown into it, and that it focused on making itself good with the elements it had, without trying to over bloat and fill the player with so much stuff to do. And I really, really like that. I really, really like that about this game. It just felt like a game that, again, if you were playing this game in the mid-2010s or even much later than that, those games were complete. They focused on making sure that the player just had enough content to work with and felt good to do all of it. And that's what I feel with Mad Max here. And that's the gameplay in a nutshell. So, Is Mad Max worth your time? The answer is yes. There's a lot I liked about Mad Max. While the story is a little bit weak, graphics and gameplay are surprisingly well done. This game kind of made me fall back in love with open world games. Nowadays, open world games are filled to the brim with bloat and just makes the game very tedious. Yeah, Mad Max is made like a game that's given just enough for the player to really have fun. The game can last about 20 hours, but you'll easily lose yourself like I did, going from 20 hours to 35 hours, maybe even longer if you're trying to complete the game fully. Overall, I can see why so many people want people to play Mad Max. I can see why so many people fell in love with it. I can see why it's an underrated classic that everyone should at least give a chance to play. If you loved Sleeping Dogs, then this game is right up your alley. I think it's perfect for that little section of games when it comes to why don't they make games like this anymore. It feels like it has a lot of heart into it, some great passion, and they just really wanted to make a good single player game. There's not even really any DLC for this game. There is like some DLC that's just adding in a little bit of ornaments here and there, but nothing super major. And if there was any DLC for the game, I probably would be picking it up. Overall, I had a great time with Mad Max. It was a fun and great game. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, give a like on the video, and of course, comment down below and tell me what else you liked about Mad Max. How did you find it, and what was your experience with it? I'll see you guys in the next game.